everybody. Remember that one time I went into like a deep dive and recap of what went on in Throne of Glass? Yeah, we're gonna do that again, but we're gonna go with Crown of Midnight. Book 2 in the Throne of Glass series is gonna be so much fun. We're gonna have a lot of great, we're gonna be yapping and giggling and all that stuff. And also crying and weeping. It's gonna be just an emotional roller coaster. So let's get into it. Last time we checked on Celaena, we found out that she won the King's Tournament. She's now the King's Champion. She broke up with Dorian because she's like, hey, I can't be the King's Champion and be in a relationship with the Prince. This is gonna be a little weird. And then we also found out that the King and Duke Parrington are doing some really just villainy, just things. It's honestly, it's gonna continue in this one, okay? Just a heads up. But if you want a more detailed recap on the Throne of Glass series, I'm gonna post the video down below in the description. It's a great video, if I do say so myself. It was great, it was fun, funky, fresh, and if you haven't watched it, go watch it. The video takes care of everything that went on in Throne of Glass, so yes, there'll be spoilers. And of course, in this video, there's gonna be spoilers for Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, so just be wary of that. If you have not read the books, just like, if you want to read them, go ahead and read them. Pause this video, come back, and read. Or pause this video, go read, come back, then watch it. But if you don't care about spoilers, just keep watching, I guess. I mean, it's up to you, really. So, before we get into this video, we're going to be talking about plot, characters, themes, foreshadowing, mythos and lore, and because this is my video, things that I liked, but we're going to be structuring it a little bit differently. I structured it, or I sectioned off too much in the last video, so we're going to combine a few things. So with plot, we're going to combine foreshadowing and characters and things that I like, so not to worry, it's going to be all nicely just freshened up. So let's get started. Now with plot, so in the previous book we did end with Celaena being the King's Champion, and with the King basically threatening her, saying, if you don't do what I want you to do, I'm going to kill Nehemia and kill her family and then kill Chaol. It's just a whole mess. He's not messing around, And she also saw an army of dead, just an army of dead, while she was fighting Kanan, just hallucinating. So that's a lot of fun. So this book starts off with Celaena being the King's Champion and taking care of the targets that the king has for her to take care of. And so the first one that we see is Lord Nyrell. She's supposed to bring back his head in a signet ring, so it's proof that she killed him. She gets the test done, she's that girl. We love her. And when she goes back, he's like, hey, I have another target for you. There's supposedly like a rebellion that's going on and people don't like me, and I want you to get to the center of things. Just take out this person that I hear is just feeding into these rebellion things. And the name that he gives her is Archer Finn. She knows this name and she's a little shocked, why Archer Finn? And we're like, who's Archer Finn? Why Archer Finn? Just hold up. After her meeting, of course, Chaol tries to debrief her, and he's like, hey, let's talk about it. You literally just killed someone, so let's talk about what's going on, how you're feeling. Let's not carry any feelings into your personal life, all that stuff. But she's like, no, leave, I don't want to talk about it. And we see a little bit in this instance that Chaol is kind of pining for her. We know from the last book, Chaol really likes her, obviously, and it still continues in this book, so we see that. So anyways, Celaena brushes him off and she's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. And we realize it's because she didn't actually kill Lord Nyrell. She hasn't killed any of her targets that the king has given her, and that's pretty much mutiny. I mean, you're not doing what the king tells you to do, but she basically has not killed any of them. She gives them the choice. She's like, you can either stage your death, okay, run far away, hide from everyone you know, take up a new lifestyle, never ever mention your name again, or I can kill you. And of course, everyone picks the former, so good choice for them. That's basically what Lord Nyrell chose. That's what she's doing right now. And how she gets away with it, you ask? Oh, of course, she finds someone who kind of vaguely looks like them and who's already been dead, gets their head, kind of mutilates it a little bit, and gets their signet ring and just shows it to the king. That's what she does, which is so smart. We love a smart girl. We love just the resourcefulness of Celaena. She really is so smart. We love her. But this little act really gives us a hint into her defying the king's orders. She's already like, hey, let me just not kill people, even though she's a trained assassin. She has killed people. But let's not do it. That really is just a little bit of her defying the king's orders, becoming a little bit rebellious. It's a great little nugget of her character that will gradually become bigger, and it's just, we're gonna talk about that more. This is so good. I love how the characters evolve in these books. Just so good. So also what's going on, and Celaena said, we also get that she has not heard from Celaena since the duel. So literally she's not heard anything, has not been given any news whatsoever, and that really, she's not sure if she likes it or if she's paranoid. You know, Celaena all in the last book was like, you need to get rid of the evil. So she's like, okay, have I gotten rid of it yet? Like, did I do that? Did I do that with Cain? And also, is she like, but is there, you know, more evil? I don't want there to be. Really what Celaena wants in this first half of the book is she just wants peace. She wants peace. She doesn't want to rock the boat. She wants to be free, and she wants to do what she will, you know? She doesn't want to be tied down to any huge, I don't want to say prophecy, but she doesn't want to be tied down to something bigger than her, bigger than what she can control, you know? And also at the same time, we get that she has nightmares of her duel with Cain, and we get that she has nightmares where he's saying her true name. We don't get that true name yet, but we will, don't worry. And then at the same time as this, we're getting a side plot with Nehemia. She is trying to talk to the king and is like, hey, I really care about my people, and I really don't want them to be sent off into Calacola, which is another kind of camp. You know what I mean by camp? Not the good kind of camp. Not the fun where you sing songs and all that. No, the bad kind of camp where people get mercilessly killed and all that stuff. Just like what basically Dovier was. Calacola is the same, and it's in Elway, and she just doesn't want her people to be there because it's already full down there, and also her people she wants to keep safe. It's just a whole mess. And yeah, like, she should be fighting for that. She is their princess, and also that's the right thing to do. So after Celaena basically breaks up with Dorian in the last book, there is a continual widening of the relationship in this book, or in this half of the book, and it's really just like, after the breakup, like, what are they? Are they friends? Do they want to be friends? Do they not want to be friends? What's going on? So we see that, especially in the first few chapters, of what's going on between them, which also coincides with Chaol and Dorian, because Dorian obviously sees Chaol cares for Celaena, so he's a little bit of the odd man out right here. And while Chaol and Celaena have been getting, well acquainted in this book, Chaol also feels that he can talk to Celaena in ways that he can't talk to Dorian, especially with him killing Cain in the last book. That was Chaol's first kill. This is a lot of sounds, and it's making me think that I'm doing like some kind of tongue twister, but I digress. Basically, Chaol is still uneasy about killing someone, and this is the first person that he's killed. So let's look at that like in context of his character and what that looks like in this whole storyline. So basically, Chaol has not killed anybody. He's like 22 years old. He's captain of the guard, a higher up position. He's not killed anybody. He's the son of a lord. Adarlan is basically colonizing other kingdoms. So like, this just shows the privilege of Chaol getting into this position. He didn't have to kill anybody. He didn't have to protect himself in a position where it's like he had to kill to protect himself. He never had any of that. So seeing that, it really gives more light to Chaol's character and to Chaol, like where Chaol has been, his past, and where he's at now. But I think that's very interesting. And of course, this gives Chaol the comfort to be able to ask Celaena, hey, do you ever think about the people that you killed? And she's like, yes, of course I do. Even the ones that deserve it. And he's like, okay. Like, it kind of gives him a better perception of the position that he's in if Celaena, who is a trained assassin, thinks about people that she's killed. So obviously it just gives that more, it illuminates that side of things. There's more intimacy within the conversations that Celaena and Chaol have, which is very good. I like that that's different, a different contrast to Dorian and Celaena's intimacy together. Like, there's different examples, you know what I mean? It illuminates their characters a lot more. Now, while Celaena and Chaol are off together on the grounds, Dorian is visited by his cousin Roland, who is from northern Adarlan. And basically, Roland is now part of the King's Council, which is absolutely insane. Now, Roland is a little bit more on the younger side. He's like probably around Dorian's age, maybe older, but he's very much a ladies' man. And Chaol and Celaena just have bad vibes for him. Now, while Celaena just can't quite figure out why there's bad vibe, Chaol does, and basically tells Celaena, hey, yeah, I found him in bed with a woman that I really liked at the time. and he did it on purpose. And she's like, oh, okay, he's really that scummy, you know? And they watch out for him. They're keeping an eye on him, especially Celaena. She's like, I got my eye on you. Now, Celaena begins her observation on Archer Finn, and that's a whole lot of fun because she kind of like, she has this whole thing going on where she's like, I know it'd be easy to kill him because he's not some kind of warmongering villain, but I want to get more information on this rebellion, like what's going on. So she requests that she's given a month to kill him, and the king's like, okay, cool. And so she's trying to keep eyes on him and figure out like, why is he at the center of this rebellion? What does that do for him, you know? Now, we've gotten from Celaena in the last book that she loves books. She is a reader. She loves to learn. She loves, you know, the written word, which is it's so great for us who read the books because we're like, twin, you know? So one night, she can't sleep and she's like, let me go to the library. Let me get a book. And as she's on her way, she sees this weird dark figure and she's like, okay, what? And then the eye of Elena starts glowing and she's like, oh, okay. And the figure disappears and she books it back to her room and she's like, all right, I gotta figure out what's going on. Why did my Eye of Elena amulet like light up? Like, it hasn't done that in months, not since the King's Tournament. Let me just see if I can contact Elena, okay? So she runs to her room and goes down to the tomb, and she finds some surprises. Like, for one, the knocker to the door to the tomb is alive. It's a little magical being named Mort, and he's a door knocker, and his name is Mort. And he's a little shy, you know? That's why we didn't see him in the first one. He just didn't want to talk, you know? I get that. But also, like, it's magical and it works. And in this scene is where we get a lot of good information on why Mort is alive and not other magical things. And it's because Mort is made of ancient magic, and because he was made by Brannon, King Brannon himself. And he makes a comment that not all magic can be barred, not something ancient like him or like Wordmark. He then asks Celaena, like, what's your name? What's your name? He already knows what her name is, but he's asking, what's her name? She's like, Celaena Sardothian. And he starts laughing. Add that to another reason why Celaena has a true name. So yeah, let's figure out what her true name is. And Mort tells her, oh, Elena told me about you. Yeah, I know you. She told me who you really are. Okay, well, can Elena tell us who she really is? We'd love to know that. But he does tell Celaena that Elena did leave a message for her and that he'll recite it for her. And it goes as follows. If I could leave you in peace, I would, but you have lived your life aware that you will never escape certain burdens. Whether you like it or not, you are bound to the fate of this world. As the king's champion, you are now in a position of power, and you can make a difference in the lives of many. Now it says after that, Celaena's stomach turned over. Yeah, she doesn't want to be part of something bigger than herself. She just wants to have freedom, you know? She just wants to be free and be, you know, whatever. Mort then tells her that Cain and the Ridderach were only the beginning, and that there is a more dangerous adversary out there, and she needs to defeat it. We're back on to Celaena and her mission to kill Archer. Now, we know with Archer, she's taking her sweet time. We know that she wants to conveniently run into him while she's going out to lunch, you know? She wants to kind of figure out what's going on. And of course, Chaol has been hounding her like, let me help. And so she's like, fine, come with me. So she goes with Chaol to do this little, you know, oh, you're here? How have you been? You know, kind of thing. And what's really funny is when Chaol realizes that Celaena and Archer know each other. Not know each other, but they know each other from the past. And that kind of just makes him a little iffy on the whole situation. Like, what's going on? How do you know him? I think also what unnerves him is that he figures out that Archer's a courtesan. In blatant terms, he is a sex worker, a professional sex worker. And a lot of times, the assassins and the courtesans, they knew of each other. Not because they worked together in that situation. Maybe some of them did, but because they knew of each other, you know. And so that really catches Chaol off guard. But we do know that he is a lot older than Celaena, but he's very handsome, so we do know that, you know. She probably had a crush on him when she was younger, kind of thing. Now later on, Celaena attends a dinner at the palace, and the king is there, and she just needs to play, you know, the good servant, just to be there and just to watch over things and all that stuff. She tries to get a feel for Dorian around his cousin, like, is he a little iffy? But they seem like they're family, you know, they're just having fun, all that stuff. While she's at this dinner, she's watching Dorian, and she wonders, why didn't Elena entrust him with these tasks? It's like, okay, why Dorian? Why not Chaol? You know? What's going on with this whole situation? And we'll figure that out. Anyway, so Dorian leaves dinner, and Celaena quickly follows him and is like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? In Celaena's own way, not in my own way, because I would be a lot more softer and well-spoken, but Celaena would be like, hey, you okay? You good? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine, whatever. Celaena takes this time to warn Dorian about his cousin. Is like, hey, just making sure, like, your cousin, whatever, she's just making sure. And he's like, he's harmless. And she's like, okay, well, maybe not, just be careful. Dorian kind of bites back at that, and he's like, he starts to accuse her of taking advantage of him. And it's like, okay, her? And then she kind of bites back right back at him, because she can take it and she can bring it back, and she's like, hey, don't come crying to me when you're a puppet, if you already aren't one. Ooh, she got him good. And that definitely made him angry, and he storms off. After Celaena and Dorian talk, she takes this time to go to Chaol in the dungeons. She's going to ask a few questions herself. She asks if Roland can be trusted, and Chaol, very chilling in her answer, says none of us can be trusted, especially not Roland. Okay, go on. Now during this interaction, we see that Chaol is tired, and she's like on the brink of madness, okay? Celaena, like, in the thoughts, Celaena's like, she heard of her opium addictions, Chaol's opium addiction. After being locked away, she's like having serious withdrawal issues, and like, of course she's having serious withdrawal issues. And not to mention, Parrington is literally like, he's visiting her, and the guards turn a blind eye when he starts to abuse her. And after a moment, Celaena's like, she immediately takes pity on her, even though she doesn't like Chaol. Chaol tried to kill her. Celaena takes pity on her and gives Chaol her cloak. Love that. We love a sisterhood, you know what I mean? And before Celaena leaves, Chaol says some more weird stuff, okay? She's like, my headaches are worse every day, worse and worse, and full of all those flapping wings. Girl, are the wings in the room with us? I'm gonna have nightmares. What wings are you talking about, girl? And that's especially weird, because literally, what wings are you talking about? We've had no recollection of wings in this entire thing. And then she says, on top of that, she says, sometimes I think they brought me here, not to marry Parrington, but for another purpose. They want to use me. And she also says, something is coming, and I am to greet it. I beg your pardon, girl? Blink twice if you need help. Now, Celaena tells all of this to Nehemia and their little girls, moment, their little, you know, they have a morning where they're just like, let's talk some girl stuff. She tells Nehemia, and Nehemia's like, what the hell does that mean? Celaena, and of course, before that, after she left Chaol, she tells Chaol, is like, hey, something's going on, and this is what's going on in Chaol's cell. And of course he rips his guards a new one and is like, gonna make sure that never happens again. Thank you, Chaol. We love you. We love Chaol. We love Chaol. So of course Celaena tells Nehemia about what Chaol did, and this invokes a conversation about honor of the court. Then Nehemia tells Celaena that her father told her stories about the honor of the Terrazin court, and that if Terrazin were to rise again, they would be a threat to Adarlan. We love it. We love a little Terrazin drop. And then Nehemia goes on to mention that Wendelin, which is across the sea from Adarlan, she wonders if they would ever consider being a threat to Adarlan. But then she quickly says, well, but they didn't do anything when the king enslaved the continent, so why would they do anything now? Now, Celaena, we can kind of tell she's a little bit bothered by this conversation, so she quickly changes the subject, you know? She asks how Nehemia is and what's going on with her. Like, what's going on with you? What's going on with your whole thing with the king? Like, can we focus on you for a second? So we figure out from Nehemia, Roland is now part of the council. That's what we figure out. And is in charge of smoothing things over with Nehemia, because Nehemia has been bombarding Minister Mollison, who is in charge of the whole Calacola thing, and basically is like, hey, don't be too pushy on this whole situation. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make Nehemia like, you're being a little too pushy. Kind of back up for a second. And it's like, hey, call me crazy, and I might be a little far-fetched, but I don't think Nehemia is being too pushy about the labor camp where her people are forced to be enslaved. Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb on that one and say that she's not being too pushy. Okay, so later on, Celaena has dinner with Archer. They have been planning a nice dinner together just to catch up. They have dinner, they have a great time. There's a little bit of flirting with Celaena, maybe not in the, you know, putting on a performance way, but an actual, like, he's really cute and like I've always had a crush on him kind of way type thing. And we learn in this whole situation that while Celaena was training as an assassin, Archer was training as a courtesan. And even though he was older, they still crossed paths because Archer was a courtesan for some of the people that Celaena knew. So that's how they knew of each other. Now we do figure out some of the descriptions of Archer in that he is extremely charismatic, so handsome that when he was at his bidding, which is basically like this big party where they kind of auction off the first-time courtesans. They've never had sex before. They're completely virgins, and they auction them off to a lucky person who'll basically be their first. Basically, there was such a commotion at his first bidding that there were all-out brawls between women. So this is basically what Sean Kingston was singing about, you know, in Beautiful Girls, but it was all about Archer because this guy is just way too hot. Kind of reminds me of that picture of Zayn Malik, you know, in the, I think it was the 2014. It's gotta be 2014 MTV Music Awards, you know what I'm talking about? That's how I kind of picture Archer. Anyways, so Celaena finally confesses to him on the way back to his home in the carriage that she was sent to kill him. She'll give him the option, either, you know, fake your death and leave, or I'll actually kill you. And he's like, okay, I will take the first option. And he loves this option because he's in debt with Clarice. Now, Clarice is his boss lady. He wants to be free of that. So he's perfectly on board with staging his death. Then also Celaena's like, hey, I still want information though on this rebellion thing. I know you have nothing to do with it, but like, what's going on? And so he's like, all right, I can give you some names. I hear some of my clients talking about it, and he's like, basically they're backing this lady named Aelin Galanthinius. Oh, we'll figure out who that is in just a second. I know who that is. You don't know who that is, or you will. Or you do. So, needless to say, Celaena's really shocked when she hears this name, okay? She's like, the dead princess from Terrorism? Like, she's dead. So yeah, that's a bit of a shocker information that she's left with after, you know, before she leaves Archer. She stops by Chaol's room, tells him about the dinners, like, everything is great, everything is fine, you know, no worries. And they share a sweet moment because Celaena's like, why do you care and all that? Chaol's like, I will always care about you. And I think it finally occurs to her, like, oh, this isn't just like a, hey, we meet up kind of friends thing. This is an actual, like, you actually do care for me type thing. And it's like, girl, wake up. Yeah, we knew that. Now, Archer did tell Celaena about masquerade party where one of Archer's clients will attend. And that's one of the clients that is mentioned, like, being a part of the rebellion type thing. Celaena attends, and she's all dressed up. She's all fancy. She has a mask and everything. She intends to find this client named Davis and overhears these rebellious, put in quotation marks, rebellious people just want a leader that will do like what they want, like basically serve their needs. And she also learns that the king is finding these traitors. He's basically interrogating them, torturing them, and executing them. And she's like, I didn't hear any about, like, she's just so confused on this. And it mainly has to do with the fact that she's been leaving the city and going on all these, you know, trips to kill these targets and all this stuff. Could be part of that. But anyways, that's what she's hearing. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is a lot bigger than I've given weight to. Okay. And this is kind of putting into the fact of, like, you know, Celaena doesn't want to be a part of anything bigger than herself, that bigger than she can control. But this is starting to be bigger than what she can control. This is an all-out rebellion in the Princess of Terrazin's name. So Archer ends up taking her to Davis's office where she finds a book of word marks. They break in, you know, but she finds a book of word marks, and Archer leaves her there and is like, all right, I'm gonna make sure nothing happens. And she finds the book of word marks, and it's similar to the one she finds in the library. You know the one, The Walking Dead. Now with Rick Grimes, the other Walking Dead, which is absolutely insane. Will we ever figure out what else is in The Walking Dead? Sorry, I'm off on a tangent. Let's go back. She opens it and finds a phrase scribbled in the book. And the phrase says, "It is only with the eye that one can see rightly." Very weirdly put. Like, I'm reading off my notes, and even, like, for me, I want to switch some words around, but it is only with the eye that one can see rightly. Guess is as good as mine. Anyways, Davis returns and tries to disarm Celaena. He ends up giving her a cut on her arm, and there ends up being a poison on the sword. Like, he has poison on the sword, so it gets in her bloodstream, and the poison is Gloriella, which she remembers, oh, that was one of the poisons in the poisons test in the King's tournament. So that's a little callback. And she ends up killing Davis with the knife. She then ends up booking it back to the palace. I mean, running at full speed. She feels herself starting to give out, and she's like, I gotta get to the palace ASAP, gets to the palace and actually goes straight to Chaol's office, ends up collapsing in Chaol's office while he's there, by the way, and tells him the poison before she completely like passes out. Now thankfully Chaol took her and got her the antidote, so we're all good. When she woke up, they talked. Chaol was absolutely beside himself. He could not imagine her getting hurt, and he like barely sleeps and all that. He couldn't imagine her getting hurt and losing her. It like absolutely drove him almost to a brink of madness, to where he was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, he was paralyzed. He literally couldn't do anything but wait. And he's like, you need to stay in bed. You can't do anything else. You need to regain your strength. And so she does. Celaena rests and she regains her strength. And when she does, she returns to the library and intends to find out what she saw that other night. That figure that she saw on her way to the library, she wants to know why it was near the library and what's going on. Now, in her search for the mysterious figure, she recalls that Chaol once told her about a library beneath the library. Intrigue. And so she also recalls the weird noise that she heard in the library whenever she was with him, like back in the fall. And there's like a point in Throne of Glass book where she talks about it, where she's like in the library, she's reading The Walking Dead, and she hears a noise and it's kind of creepy, and she's like, Chaol, did you hear that? And then he takes his sword and scrapes the floor, and it sounds like it, and she's like, okay, yeah, it sounds like it, but I thought I heard something else, like, kind of thing. She recalls all this while she's journeying down into the library, just going all the way far back. We get descriptions of like how dusty it is and how much the decor changes and all that. Like, it's so different. It doesn't look it looks old, like nobody has been back there for years. Celaena is going to search in the library. We get a scene that cuts away to Dorian, and he's in his room. He's awaking from a nightmare, and it's bitterly cold in his room, despite the window not being open. It's winter, and he's supposed to be warm in his room. He's a prince. The window's not open. He's not actually being cold from the outside. There's something cold in his room. Like, it's kind of freaky. All of a sudden, he sees a frost ring around him, and then it disappears, along with the cold, by the way.
What was that?
Now, anyways, we're back to Celaena. She's in the library, she's going deeper, she's going down, and she's discovering that nobody has been in that part of the library in ages, okay? And guess what? She finds a secret passageway behind a tapestry. These Adderlanians and their love for putting secret passageways behind tapestries, like, although I love that. That's actually so amazing. I might actually do that in my home if I ever have one. If I ever get to afford one. And of course, no one's been there a long time. She finds all these old books and scrolls that haven't been touched. Like, that for me would be amazing. I would like spend hours just looking through those. Of course, she sees murals. The reason why she's like, oh, nobody's been down here. She sees murals depicting different historical moments. There's even some that depicts the Fae. And so we know that the king has not been down there, because those would have been ripped out and burned just in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, you know what I mean? And so we see a lot of fun stuff of like what the palace would have been prior to maybe the king, or maybe, past generations. Like, what would have been like, kind of fun stuff. Now, after she walks down 2 staircases, she finds an iron door, and clearly this door wasn't meant to be opened. And she's sensing something is weird on the other side, but she's like, let me just check what's on the other side, you know what I mean? So she takes out her dagger, she carefully kind of puts it underneath the door, and she sees a reflection of a pair of eyes. And she quickly just yanks it out, and I'm like, girl, me too. If I saw a pair of eyes, I would be like booking it back to the surface, finding somebody I can actually like tolerate being around. Someone living, like, okay, don't be away from me for like 2 days. I'm a little scared. But after that, she just convinces herself it was like a rat or something. And I'm like, you know what? I would have done the same. I would have been absolutely just in a state of delusion. Like, no, it was like a rat. It was like a snake, whatever it was. Like, it's just an animal. No worries. Now, a big party is being thrown for Holland's return. Holland is Dorian's younger brother, who's like 11 or something like that. He's coming back from school, and they're gonna throw some big parties and all that stuff. They're gonna have a lot of like fun, welcome back Holland type thing. And so they have a huge party, and Rena Goldsmith is performing. The Rena Goldsmith. She's like a big singer there. So she is throwing a concert, and at this point, while she's singing, Dorian finally finds a moment where he finally lets go of Celaena, like lets go of everything, their relationship, and his heartbreak just finally is like, you know what, I'm done at this point. And good for him. Music can help your emotions feel more clarifying. It can there's a lot of clarity there. Now, Raina Goldsmith, at this point, tonight's entertainment, she starts to sing a song about the Fae. It comes to no surprise that she's immediately killed after this. After she sings a song, she's taken to the executioner's block, and the king kills her, but while she's being brought to the executioner's block, she is literally giving a list of names of people that the king has unintentionally killed through his barring magic, has killed that have been close to her. So you know what? I respect that. That's so badass. Good for you, Rena. We love her in this household. Nothing but respect for her. No, nothing but respect for Raina Goldsmith, period. Now, later on, Celaena and Nehemia, they have some girls' time again. And Celaena confesses to Nehemia that she hasn't killed anybody. Anybody that the king has told her to kill, she hasn't killed any of them. This is all-out confession time at this point, because now Celaena takes Nehemia down to the catacombs. And of course, having another set of eyes to see everything really helps out. And I absolutely recommend that for anything. So if you're gonna write a paper or anything, definitely have another pair of eyes. Just look over, check anything that you missed. It helps so much. So anyways, so they're down in the catacombs. Of course, Celaena noticed that there's stars on the floor. She noticed that the first time she went through. But with Nehemia, she's like, oh my gosh, these are constellations. These aren't just stars. So we get a lot of good lore about the constellations in this world. So we figure out that the constellations leads to an eye and a word mark on the wall. Okay? And the eye has a hole. So Celaena's like, let me look through it. And to her surprise, there's nothing. There's nothing in the hole. So she suspects maybe the eye of Elena has something to do with it. And Nehemia's like, it's not that easy. Let me just do more research. Nehemia knows a lot about word marks and she knows what's going on. So she's like, hey, let me figure out, let me do some reading. Let me figure out what's going on, because, there could be more to this situation. Nothing's that easy. And of course, Celaena's like, yeah, I trust you. Let's go with your theory. Before they leave, Celaena asks Nehemia to teach her how to learn word marks, because Celaena just wants to know. She wants to learn this ancient language. So later on, Celaena gets a letter from Archer naming a few rebels that he knows of that are just in this whole situation, that we're helping out Davis and such. She does some spying on them, so we love it. We love to see that Celaena is some kind of Charlie's Angel. She's good at her job, and we love that. So later on in the evening, there's a ball going on, and Celaena attends as a guard, but she leaves her position because she wants to dance. She just loves to hear the music, and she just feels this overwhelming sense to just dance by herself. And at this point, Chaol sees her dancing, and instead of immediately reprimanding her, he asked her to dance with him, which is so sweet. While this is going on, Nehemia speaks with Dorian, and she tells him that his cousin, Roland, wants to expand the Calacola camp, and she asks for Dorian's help. She's like, I know I can trust you. You're a good friend. Please help me with this. I can't do this by myself. And before she leaves him, she says that he has some power in him, and she can help. Now, he doesn't know what this means, and we don't know what this means either, and we're kind of struck by it, but she just leaves it at that. And this gives him something to think on, and also us too, because we're like, how are you talking about Nehemia? Tell us more, girl. You got a lot of secrets. And you know what? I strive to be like that. I want to be that type of person who just says something mysterious and then just walks away, and people wonder about it. Now later, Celaena visits Archer at his house and pressures him for more information, and really just threatens him. She just really wants to scare him into it. She does put a lot of fear in him, and good for her. Now, Dorian really wants to help Nehemia, and so at the meeting with his father and his councilman, they talk about putting more slaves in Calacola and all this stuff, and Calacola is already crowded to begin with. Dorian, who's so sweet, is so angry at the othering of the Elway people, and at how much they're not thinking of these people, and how just putting them as slaves. These aren't people who have done wrong. These are just people, these aren't people to be punished. He votes no to expanding Calacola. Yeah, we love Dorian. We do, we love Dorian. We do. And so after a verbal back and forth, he storms out of the meeting. He walks down the stairs, and he just gets so angry. He punches a wall, and it's so forceful, it cracks and breaks a window, and the window shatters, comes towards him, and all of a sudden there's just this ring around him of debris that stops. That's the moment he realizes, oh my gosh, I have some sort of magic. Freaks him out. Okay, now Celaena and Chaol share some sweet moments, and she leaves him to go back to her room, But she sees Dorian there, and Dorian's searching for Nehemia. She's like, hey, can I help you? And he's like, no, and then he storms off. So it's a little weird for Celaena. She's like, okay. But like I said, during the ball, Nehemia did go to Dorian and was like, hey, I can help you. And so I think that's what he was thinking. He was like, okay, only I can trust Nehemia. She can help me with what's going on. So she knows something. Nehemia definitely knows something. Now, a carnival has come to town. It is for Prince Holland. They are celebrating him. They are like, yay, we love our prince. He's so sweet. We really don't get any like scenes with Holland at all. Like no really speaking from him, which is really funny. They just use him as a plot device to give us more stuff to celebrate him for, which I like. I think that's a great idea. Chaol's men are prepping for the carnival and bringing like security and all that stuff. During Chaol's perspective, the king instructs Chaol to keep an eye on Nehemia, saying that she's too distracting and there's a threat on her life. Okay, and that's all we get. Roland ends up speaking with Dorian and sympathizing with him, and it's like, he basically tells Dorian that he called off the vote after he left, and which is an interesting sentiment with Roland. Like, what is his, was he being kind, or what's his motive with this whole thing? We get some conflicting things going on. So we'll hang on to that. There is an answer to it, but we'll hang on to it. After Dorian speaks with Roland, he sees Celaena and Chaol at the carnival while it's being set up, and they meet a fortune teller at the carnival who turns out to be a witch named Baba Yellowlegs. Now, sounds like an interesting character, and every time I read her name in this book, I read it in the cadence of Baba Black Sheep. Don't ask me why, but that's all I can think about. So after they talk to Baba Yellowlegs, Dorian gives Chaol his birthday present. He has a birthday in a few days, and he gives him an Asterian mare, which is an expensive gift. It's just stupidly expensive. It's basically only for rich and rural people. And Celaena makes a comment about stealing an Asterian mare one time, and Dorian and Chaol are like, you did what? And she kind of makes a comment about, yeah, she stole it from a lord one time, like a year or two ago, or like, a couple years ago, whatever. Now later on, Celaena goes down to the tomb to try something. She wants to know more about the amulet, basically, and she tries to put the amulet in the eye hole that she found. It fits, but it does nothing. And so she's like, okay, maybe Nehemia was right. It's not that easy. Now, Celaena has a dream that night, and it's kind of symbolic of her choices, but she wakes up from it. Turns out she has the same dream on that night every year, and she leaves from the palace, and she just goes outside the city to be by herself. And I kind of marked a few things from that dream, and this is what she dreamed of. Celaena stood on a barren edge of a ravine, a chill northern wind ruffling her hair. She had this dream before. Always this setting, always this night of the year. Behind her sloped a rocky, wasted plain, and before her stretched a chasm so long it disappeared into the starlight horizon. Across the ravine was a lush, dark wood, rustling with life, and on the grassy lip of the other side stood the white stag, watching her with ancient eyes, his massive antlers glowing in the moonlight, wreathing him in ivory glory, just as she remembered. It had been on a chill night like this that she had spotted him through the bars of her prison wagon on the way to Endovier, a glimmer of a world before it burned to ash. They watched each other in silence. She took a half step close to the edge, but paused as loose pebbles trickled free, tumbling into the ravine. And then it skips on. I'm going to skip a few paragraphs. The stag had come closer, his head now angled, as if inviting her to join him. But the ravine only seemed to grow wider, like the maw of a giant beast opening to devour the world. So Celaena did not cross, and the stag turned away, his steps near silent, as he disappeared between the tangled trees of the ageless wood. Now, that's a lot to unpack, which we're not going to do right now, but that's basically like her dream has a lot of prophetic and symbolic things that apply to her life, and she has the same one every single year. And so she goes and she leaves the city. Now, Chaol goes up to Celaena's room in the morning to find out basically why she wasn't at the barracks to train, because they usually train every morning. He finds Nehemia in her room. She tells him that she's not there, and she informs him that she probably left the city because it's the 10th anniversary of her parents' death. That's a lot to unpack. So in the first few chapters of Throne of Glass, we hear about Celaena going absolutely wild on some guards at the salt mines, and then booking it for the border without, like, knowing full well that she'll probably be killed. Like, she just goes for it. She doesn't want to escape, she just wants to run. And she's knocked out and she's brought back to the salt mines. Now, we know that happened, in this book, we now know that happened on the anniversary of her parents' death. So this is something that's very emotionally triggering to her. Later on after dark, she gets back to her room. She sees Chaol is waiting for her, and he is providing company and cake. So during this time, Dorian is wanting to find out more about magic in him. He's already figured out I have magic, so he wants more. He wants to know more. So he goes to the library, and we get this entire history lesson, which I'll go into more. But basically, he's going through his family genealogical records, and he's looking for any note of someone in his family being a magic wielder. And so he's going through like couple generations by couple generations, because there's a lot. He sees that there were some magic wielders who were married in, but basically it was a drought. Like there's none that continued on in line. Now he found a record that started with Gavin Haviliard, who is the founder and the first king of Adarlan. So perfect, he's at the beginning. Here's where we get some lovely information. Gavin and his bride Celaena, they fought a dark lord named Erawan and received the land of Adarlan from his father-in-law Brannon, who is the king of Terrazin, or was the king of Terrazin, received the land of Adarlan as a wedding gift from him. Now, since Celaena Galanthinius Haviliard, I'm going to emphasize Galanthinius, there has been no Fae in the bloodline. So that's fun. He then looks at the Galanthinius family bloodline and saw it was riddled with magic wielders and such. He notes that they could have easily taken Adarlan. He's like, okay, they were so powerful, they literally could have conquered any kingdom that they wanted, but they didn't. Basically, they kept the peace. Okay, that probably should have been us, don't tell my dad. He thinks for a moment. What if the heir of the Terrazin throne, Aelin Galanthinius, had lived? Would they be friends? Would they be allies? Would she be his bride? And then he thinks back on the time that he had met her. He had met Aelin Galanthinius when she was a child. His memory was a bit hazy, but he remembers that she had tried to set her older cousin on him to teach him a lesson for spilling tea on her dress. So very petty things, but like she's, very much take charge kind of child. Speaking of the cousin, we get that his name is Aedion Ashriver, and he became a general for his father. Not Aedion's father, for Dorian's father. The cousin to the heir of Terrazin is now a general for the man who destroyed his homeland, Aedion's homeland. Don't worry, we're gonna figure out more about that. From Dorian's perspective, he wondered if Nehemia truly knew what was going on, like if she truly knew that he had magic. And he states in his thought process that he saw her drawing symbols in the air at the duel with Cain and Celaena, and then fainting. Then he remembers Nehemia was there whenever Celaena's marking above her brow showed up, which we still don't know what that means, but he basically can't go to Nehemia. Nehemia's been MIA, so he decides in that moment, let's go talk to Baba Yellowlegs. We get Chaol's birthday dinner, which Celaena has beautifully put together, not herself, but has other people put together, in a greenhouse in town. It's like above this apothecary. It was a private dinner for them too. Chaol's favorite foods, and Chaol's absolutely amazed. He's like, no one has ever done this for me, like at all. Celaena has chosen at this time, at this dinner, to tell Chaol about the fact that she's basically been lying and saying, I haven't killed anybody for the king. And Chaol is basically mortified. He's basically mortified because he knows if the king were to find out, the king would kill her. And he doesn't like that. But then Celaena's like, hey, I plan on doing this until my time is up, and I'll disappear far, far away from Adarlan. And then Chaol's like, hey, I'll join you. Why not? Why not just give my title away and just go? And he promises to join Celaena in this moment, which is so sweet. And they finally kiss. Finally, like after months of Chaol pining for her. I'm so serious. This guy, I love him. I love him. He's so great. I love Chaol. But he is just so slow. So slow at everything. But like, he goes for it. And he does. He goes for it. And when they go back to the castle, Celaena invites him back to her quarters, and they finally have sex. And it's like, awesome. Awesome. I do want to take this moment. We're going to pause for a second. I do want to take this moment and basically refute what someone said on social media about comparing Chaol to Matt from Vampire Diaries. Chaol is nothing like that rat, Matt. Matt is the worst. I can't stand him. I cannot stand Matt. Chaol is actually useful, okay? Chaol is kind. Chaol is sweet. He doesn't manipulate. Well, he does manipulate people. Hold on. Let me think about that. He's useful, okay? Matt basically just sits around and bitches. He doesn't do anything worth anything. I can't stand Matt, okay? I just wonder what would possess someone to compare the two, okay? Just because they're human and like in a magical world. And I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Chaol is annoying sometimes, sure, okay? There is a pivotal moment in one of the later stories that yes, he can be very annoying and some out-of-pocket things that he says. I get that. But there's a reason why, and we get to see an actual arc from Chaol, okay? Okay? And we'll leave it at that, because Matt does nothing. Anyway, so if you want me to talk about Vampire Diaries sometime, leave a comment down below, because I have a lot of feelings about that. I did watch that show. What a whirlwind, you know what I mean? Anyways, Dorian pays a visit to Baba Yellowlegs, and he wants to know about magic, and Baba is basically like, if someone were to have magic, they should figure out why it left in the first place, you know? Okay. And that's when Dorian leaves. We're already tipped off that Baba Yellowlegs is, like, kind of suspicious. We don't, you know, why is a witch there? Witch presumably has magic, and so why is she there and the king knows about it type thing, like in a carnival setting? We're also worried about her selling Dorian's secrets. Okay, Dorian tries to make sure, be like, hey, don't sell my secrets, here's some extra coin. But still, what's to stop her? So back to Celaena, she goes to track her targets, and she finds them leaving on a ship with their families, and she is pissed, okay? She finds Archer, okay? And he said that he had to warn him. You know, it's like, they have families. And she threatens to kill him, okay? She threatens to kill him if she doesn't get more names, okay? And, yeah, go for it, girl. I mean, I get it. Families, you want to say, but at least, like, just take the families. Just do. I don't know, I shouldn't be in this conversation. So, during this time, for the next few days, Chaol and Celaena cannot keep their hands off of each other. They are just day in, day out, whenever they can find time, they are with each other. They are going to town, even so far as to having sex in a broom closet. They're going at it, man. Like two rabbits. They're kind of falling in love, and like, who can blame them? And so then Nehemia and Celaena have their girl time, and Celaena kind of, you know, says, hey, me and Chaol are having a great time, and Nehemia's like, I'm so happy for you. Like, I love that you guys are just falling in love and all that stuff. And then that's when the conversation kind of switches to a little bit more somber tone. And Nehemia tells Celaena that the king wants her to speak to the rebels in Elway, and basically tell them to back down, which is absolutely insane and not something she wants to do and not something she should do. Like, are you kidding me? No. Nehemia knows that she can't leave Rifthold. There's some stuff that she needs to do in Rifthold, and she cannot leave yet. That's when Nehemia pleads with Celaena to help her free Elway, and that freaks Celaena out completely. Again, she doesn't want to be a part of something bigger than what she can control, and this is something bigger than what she can control. They end up having a fight where Nehemia ends it with calling Celaena a coward. Some big words. They really have not had this big of a fight in, like, ever. And so the next scene is like in a third person view. It's not necessarily calling anybody by their real name, but just by their generic names. And it's between a princess and the queen. So this whole entire chapter, the vibes that are giving off of it is basically similar to The Force Awakens when Ben says, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. And in a literary sense, very reminiscent of the image of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he's praying to God saying, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. So there's that whole dynamic of the princess knowing she has to do something, and the queen is like, yes, you have to do this. Like, there isn't another way type thing. The princess knows she needs to do something bigger than her, and she's going to accept it, which is very opposite of what Celaena is doing. And the queen even says in the beginning, one of them has to break. So we know that there's more than one that's being talked about in this situation, and that could have this story. And the princess says, but the prince isn't ready yet. So we can assess from this chapter that Nehemia is the princess, Elena is the queen, and Dorian is the prince. But we can also get that the she that Elena and Nehemia are talking about is Celaena. So this goes into the further theory of Celaena wondering, like, why wasn't Dorian chosen? Dorian's a part of this too. What place, what position, or what role does Dorian play in all this? We know that Celaena does, but what does Dorian do? On a hunting trip, the king tells Chaol that he's going to have Nehemia question tomorrow, and needs Chaol and the other soldiers to guard the room, which is so suspicious. Chaol follows the king's orders and kind of believes that everything's going to be fine, because why would the guards were there? Why would the king kill Nehemia or harm her in any way while they were there? Like, why would he do that? Chaol intentionally doesn't tell Celaena about Nehemia, and it makes him feel horrible. He is like pit in his stomach, at odds of what he should do, but he just doesn't tell her about what's going on, which which is the worst. He fully believes that the king won't harm Nehemia at all. But after waking up with them in the middle of the night beside Celaena, he takes a walk out in the gardens just to clear his head and all this stuff. He's abducted. Chaol is kidnapped, and they leave a ransom note for Celaena, which she gets after she spends the day tracking her targets. And for her, it's very reminiscent of how she lost Sam, which is someone that she loved in the past. And we do get kind of little bits of information about him throughout the book, and of course the last book where she confesses to Dorian about Sam, not completely, but says that she lost Sam. That was who she loved first. But the note basically said someone had taken him and for her to come alone. And turns out that Chaol was taking his bait for his kidnappers to get Celaena. She absolutely goes bonkers on the kidnappers, okay? Similar to how she unleashed her fury at the salt mines. Basically, that's how she was with the people who took Chaol. Archer shows up, okay, and tries to explain everything after Celaena killed so many of his men. And turns out Archer and Nehemia were working together. Who knew? And then if that wasn't enough, Archer reveals that Chaol knew about the possible threats on Nehemia's life and her being questioned by the king, because they thought Chaol would question her, but it was the king who questioned her. And from this news, Celaena, she books it back to the palace, and this gets the attention of Dorian in the halls while she's going back, and he follows her. But when Celaena gets to Nehemia's room, she finds her brutally dead on her bed, along with a few of her guards as well. From seeing Nehemia's body and hearing Chaol say her name, she realized he had known about the threats and the king questioning her, and she felt betrayed by all this, which, like, girl, yeah, same. This is one of the things I was telling you, that Chaol sometimes does stupid stuff. But he's actually super useful, so we're just gonna go with that. But she felt betrayed by Chaol, and for good reason. I would too. And she attacks him, like wanting to kill him, attack him, like starts to claw at his face and give him scars on his face type thing. He tries to tell her that he's her friend, and she's like, no, you're my enemy. That's some strong words, and we're gonna get more into that, because that will come back around for something else. Celaena tries to kill Chaol, like with a sword, with a knife, tries to kill Chaol, but Dorian reaches out from far away, by the way, like is not in arm's length to Chaol, and his magic stops Celaena from killing Chaol. That's when Celaena's finally knocked out by a guard. So yeah, that was probably the best situation. And they ended up taking her to the dungeons, where she's like kind of down there for a few days just to get her anger out. They don't want her to kill anybody else type of thing. I get it, guys. It's a hard situation. It's a hard position to be in. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And this is when Chaol tells Dorian about the whole situation, like tells him what's going on, tells him about how whenever Celaena left, she literally left like a moment before he did. He left like a few seconds after her, took a horse, and she still outran him and the horse. And he could not figure out how that was possible. We will, but he couldn't figure it out. Now, Chaol found out that the king did not kill Nehemia, but Chaol still had Nehemia's room guarded and can't figure out who did it. Like, how did someone slip past his guards? No one could have slipped past his guards, because his guards was guarding Nehemia's room the entire time. Like, what was going on? How did this person kill? It kind of reminds me of like a Sherlock Holmes case, but I can't remember which one, where like everything is locked from the inside. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? It's that whole case. That's what it reminds me of. Celaena then wakes up in the dungeons and talks with Celaena, who is still in the dungeons, by the way. She's been in there for months. And that's not a laugh. That's just a, dear Lord, get this girl a bed type thing. You know what I mean? We see they share a misery. First, Celaena is to marry Parrington and go with him to Morath. And she says she knows he has to have something in mind for her, but she doesn't know what it is. And that's kind of scary to figure out, yeah, because we know Parrington is a little evil prick. And that's when she makes the comments about her headaches, about getting worse and worse, and how the wings won't stop. And Celaena then makes the connection that Nehemia said her dreams have been filled with shadows and wings. Celaena then says if they let her, meaning Celaena, out to make them pay. And then Celaena swears that she will make sure of it. And then she drinks the water that has sedatives in it, and she just wants to feel nothing for a while. She literally can't believe her best friend is dead, and the last thing her friend ever said to her was that she was a coward. It's such a brutal wake-up call for Celaena. This is a horrible rock bottom for her. 4 days pass, and Chaol tries to figure out what's going on, but Celaena's passed out on sedatives, and he's a gentleman and brings her back to her room. He knows that he can't ever come back to where they were. It's all because he made a mistake of not telling her what was going on. And what's really sad on top of that, just before he was kidnapped, he had already imagined marrying Celaena and having kids together and living somewhere far, far away from Adeline. And like, this is like a whole new heartbreak. He had imagined this entire future with her, and now it's completely gone. and they can't ever have that. Now, to break up the story, we do get a short scene of an unnamed slave in the mines of Calacola, and she hears the news of Princess Nehemia's death, and she turns to her overseer and begins to unleash her fury on him with her pickaxe. This scene in particular is like really, really good. I enjoy that we see an outside perspective of what's going on in the story. We're not just in this bubble. It's so good because it shows the effect of Nehemia's death and how Nehemia was hope for so many people. And I just want to read a little bit of the chapter. And then she heard it, the words that changed everything. Princess Nehemia is dead, assassinated by Aderlin. The words were past her before she ever had time to swallow them. There was a scrape of leather against a rock. The overseer would tolerate the pause for only a few seconds longer before he started swinging. Nehemia is dead. She stared down at the pickaxe in her hands. She turned slowly to look into the face of her overseer, the face of Aderlin. He cocked his wrist, pronged the whip ready. She felt her tears before she realized they were falling, sliding through 6 months' worth of filth. Enough, the words screamed through her. So loudly she began to shake. Silently, she began to recite the names of her dead, and as the overseer raised his whip, she added her name to the end of that list and swung her axe into his gut. I'm telling you, there's some really good, like, descriptive scenes of characters' reactions, like how they felt, and that's like such a good charged reaction that I really enjoyed, I really enjoyed how it fleshed out this story. Going back to what's going on in Rifthold, Chaol had guards watching over Celaena, making sure she wasn't going to go insane again and all that stuff, especially near Dorian. That's one of his main priorities, is to keep Dorian safe, and he's still trying to figure out his magic. But after a few days, Celaena realizes that the style of which Nehemia was killed, because she can't stop seeing it in her mind, it was not in the style of the king, but rather in the style of Grave. You remember Grave? He was in the King's tournament, and he was one of the champions in the tournament. He was sponsored by Minister Mullison and made it to the final 4, where he was beat by Celaena in a duel. That's the one where she was like, it's me, bitch, I'm Celaena Sarauthian, I'm not Lillian Gordana type thing. Yeah, that was him. And Celaena goes down to the tomb to grab Damaris and heads out to kill Grave through the underground tunnel system because her room is being guarded by Chaol's men. She knows it. She heads to the vaults, which is kind of a grimy, scummy place. She asks the barkeep about Grave, where he's at, and she kind of wants people to know that she's there, that she's looking for Grave. And she finds him in another tavern, though, and hunts him down. She finally corners him, and he thinks he's gonna win. He's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get this girl this time. She embarrassed me last time, no, I'm gonna get her. But he doesn't know Celaena. She's got it all under a wild control. She's wild, but she definitely knows how to control those wild emotions, like in an untamed way. It's very weird to describe, but she knows how to work it. But we find out that someone hired him to kill Nehemia. Celaena then wants to torture and kill him, and she does. And she brings his head to the king as he's having a meeting with his councilman and tells him that Minister Mullison hired him to kill Nehemia, who is there, by the way. Minister Mullison is in the meeting, and they take Minister Mullison into custody. So after that, Celaena visits Archer, and he asks her to help their cause. Basically wants her to help with what him and Nehemia were doing, but she reiterates her warning and gives him 5 days. Now we do get a scene with Chaol and his father, and this kind of shows their tumultuous relationship. Chaol's father basically wants him back in Aniel, where he's from, but Chaol doesn't want to go, and we kind of get like he just doesn't want to be near his father. There's kind of this continual thing of sons and fathers and their rocky relationships, and so this is just another one to just flesh out that theme. So Celaena begins to go through Nehemia's stuff, and she's helping pack it and all that stuff to send it back to Elway, to her family. And that's when she comes across the book from Davis's office. It has symbols in it that's been drawn. It says not to trust. The symbols say not to trust, and then there's a final symbol. It's a mystery, although it looks like a wyvern, which is the royal seal. That's their mascot, basically. And that's when something clicks in Celaena's head. She goes back down to the tomb and realizes that the key wasn't the necklace, but the sword was. It reveals a poem. It says, by the vow 3 were made, of the gatestone of the word. Obsidian the gods forbade, and the stone they greatly feared. In grief he hid one in the crown, of her he loved so well, to keep with her where she laid down inside the starry cell. The second one was hidden in a mountain made of fire, where all men were forbidden, despite their great desires. Where the third lies will never be told, by voice or tongue, or sum of gold. So there's that. And that's a lot to unpack, but we won't unpack it right yet. So Celaena learns that Nehemia had also been in the tomb before, which, like, okay, Nehema, you lied again. And that's when Celaena finally breaks down crying, and Elena appears, and she sits beside her and comforts her. Now this is when Celaena finally finds the courage to go to Nehemia's grave, her temporary grave, because she'll be sent down to Elway, to her final resting place, and she says her goodbyes. Now Chaol is off in the distance and hears her singing something in a different language. Not any language that he's heard before or he's familiar with, but after she sings, she sees him. And he tries to say something to her, but she ignores him. Her grief is too much, and Chaol realizes that this will be a punishment for him not telling her. So after that, Celaena and Fleetfoot's there, are in the library, and as is Dorian, and they strike up a conversation, and they finally get back to their friendship. They're, they just wanna be friends. Chaol visits the library as well, but wants to know what language Celaena was speaking in. He then hears from the librarian of an animal running amok and knows it, and Chaol knows immediately it's Fleetfoot. So we get that those two scenes, the scenes are being intertwined. They're being like layered on top of each other, kind of. So while Chaol's in the library, he searches for funeral dirges and wonders what languages were spoken in Terrazin, because we remember that in the first book we figure out that Celaena is from Terrazin. So he's like, okay, well, what were their, like, the rituals and stuff like that. But the librarian says that the only other language spoken in Terrazin was the language of the Fae, and that was spoken long ago, like long ago, or by nobility more recently. And needless to say, this freaks Chaol out, because, like, there's a possibility that Celaena is a royal. What is she doing as an assassin? Now later on, after tracking Archer, Celaena goes to visit Dorian, and she needs some company. She needs some friendly, comfort. She needs a friend, and of course he's glad for it. She then visits the tomb, and she tries for more answers from Mort, but he makes this, sarcastic comment about she should find a seer or an oracle if she wants an instant answer, and that gives her an idea. Celaena then goes down to Baba Yellowlegs, and she tries to get answers there. Baba says that the prince has already been there. In a dialogue-heavy scene, which we'll break down in a little bit, Baba tells her of the word keys. It is a power that can open gates to other worlds at will, and Celaena then realizes she needs to run for her life because this witch is out to get her. Okay, so Chaol is still on his research grind. We love it. We love an educational man, which is more than what Matt from Vampire Diaries could have done. He's trying to figure out what Royal Celaena was. Who was she? Who did she belong to? But at that moment, he and Dorian talk about how they're doing, and they're just like having a little bro moment. They're having a friend moment, and Dorian tells Chaol that he knows that Chaol loves Celaena, and they both agree that they hate the position that Celaena is in right now and wants her to be safe. And ironically, at the same moment, Celaena is being attacked by Baba Yellowlegs, so she's fighting for her life right now, okay? And she does not want to become Baba's lunch or dinner. But in the end, Celaena does kill Baba, so good for her. And she tries to make sure that there is no body to be found, so she burns everything, because she says better to have a missing person than a dead body. So Celaena then returns to the tomb afterwards, and Mort says that since she killed a witch, she'll be marked forever. That there's a smell on her that lets Mort know that she is a witch killer. And not only just any witch killer, but a witch killer of a leader of a coven. So she needs to be careful, and I'm sure that won't come back to bite her. So later on, Chaol finds that Celaena made up her own will and that she put him in it, basically leaving everything to him, and she made it 2 days prior to Nehemia dying. She then appears and she tells him she won't change it. She's not gonna go through that, and she then tells him to leave her room. So she's not violent anymore, guys. Good. That's great. And on his way back to his room, he just couldn't keep it anymore. He finds a broom closet and he finally cries. Celaena then finds this moment to go back to the library to find the Walking Dead, so she could find a spell that can unlock the locked iron door below the library. Let's just say the word marks worked and the iron door is now open. It leads her through a labyrinth of like halls and doors, almost like it looks like it goes like this type thing, and they all lead to a stairwell that goes up to the clock tower. Who saw that one coming? Now Dorian sees that Celaena has gone into the library but has a sword strapped to her back, which is Damaris, but he doesn't know that yet. Basically is like, okay, what's going on? But kind of follows far back behind her, but also he sees that she found the catacombs, and he's like, oh my gosh, you found the catacombs. That was like just rumors. He follows her. Celaena's walking up the stairwell in the clock tower, and she starts to get a horrible headache, and she realizes, oh my gosh, these walls are of obsidian. She books it downstairs, and she realizes she is not alone in the clock tower, and no, it's not Dorian. Celaena gets attacked by this humanoid, like, animalistic figure, and she starts booking it. She runs into Dorian, and she's like, hey, we gotta get out of this library. And they get to the iron door, and Dorian begins to use his magic to close the door and keep it sealed. And Celaena's like, okay, well, we'll unpack that in a second, but we need to get this all figured out. So Celaena's like helping, trying to get this animalistic figure from not getting past the door. And she's like, hey, Dorian, go get the Walking Dead. Just think about it, it'll come to you. So he gets it. They get back. She does these word marks over the door to basically like keep the monster in a frozen stasis. She kills the monster, then closes the door, and then keeps the door closed. Like, basically locks it how it was. So that whole thing is going on. And afterwards, she's like, okay, dude, you have magic? You have magic and you didn't tell me? And then, you know, also she has to explain that she used word marks, you know. But then she also explains the labyrinth that she found, how it was so ancient and all that stuff. She did keep some stuff for herself, mainly about, you know, her suspicions about his dad and all that stuff and how it may be connected to everything. Basically, they share like, hey, yeah, we actually know magic. Crazy, right? And Dorian's is more natural to him, so there's that. Then Dorian explains his magic, or tries to explain it in some way, and how it just showed up one day when he left the meeting and it broke a window and all that stuff, and how it prevented Celaena from killing Chaol. And Celena's very grateful for that. She thanks him for that. As Dorian explains how he couldn't find magic in recent generations, things are starting to fall into place for Celaena. She's like, okay, I think I get it. After Celaena leaves the library, and she's already spoken to Dorian, so everything clicks and everything like that, she leaves to go find Celaena because she realizes that Celaena has magic. Everything conveniently disappeared 2 generations ago, but she knew that Celaena has it, and that's why they need her, just like how they needed Cain, because Cain came from the White Fang Mountains, and he came from powerful shamans. So do with that what you will, but she came to Celaena's cell, and she realizes that Celaena is gone because her cell's empty, and the guard says that Parrington took her. And she realizes that it wasn't just Celaena that suffered from headaches. No, it was Roland as well. Here's a kicker. Celaena is from a distant relative of Dorian and Roland, so all 3 of them have magic. Both Roland and Celaena were both taken to Morath by Duke Parrington. So some suspicious is going on in Morath, okay? Then she wonders if they needed Celaena and Roland, then what was the creature in the library? Because it was human-like, it had a heart, but she wonders if the king did that to him to end up the way like that he was, and if he ended up like that, like they put him in the dungeon, or they put him in underneath the library, because that is something else that the word keys could control. It was life. It can control life, okay? And then something else clicks. Nehemia had said that they hear wings in the Varying Gaps, and when they sent scouts to check in what was going on, the scouts never came back. So what do they do with the scouts? She needs to find out what they did with them, and what they were going to do with Celaena and Roland. And she needs to figure out how many word keys that the king has. Later on, Celaena goes back to the library to make sure that the iron door is closed, and she cannot wedge it, so she is just like, okay, whew, everything's good. But then she goes back to the catacombs and she realizes where one of the word keys is. It's the blue jewel in the center of Elena's crown in the sarcophagus type thing. But the king already has it, okay? That's what Mort tells him, because Mort said he found it when he was only 20. And from talking with Mort, she realizes that the king has stifled all magic but his own, and by extension, Dorian, because Dorian is a part of his bloodline. Celaena's at a loss at all this information, and she just doesn't know what to do. So she's all like, you know, did Nehemia know? And so that's when she gets the bright idea to open up a portal into the other world to speak to Nehemia. So she goes back to her room to summon the Walking Dead, and she gets the book, she goes back down to the catacombs, and while she's doing that, over in another part of the castle, Gavin, the first king, who's long been dead, wakes up Dorian from sleeping and warns him to stop Celaena and where to find her. Celaena then opens the portal, and after a few moments she sees Nehemia, but they cannot cross the other side, like either side of the portal, they can't cross it. And all Celaena can do is apologize. She is just beside herself. She feels like a part of her is missing. But Nehemia encourages her and warns her not to make any more portals, because you know, Nehemia showed up, but she doesn't know what other things could show up. Like, if she would have made a portal, anybody else could have showed up, and there are worse things out there. So Nehemia then tells Celaena that she knew her fate before she died, and that she needs to continue on. Nehemia then says, I want you to know that in the darkness of the past 10 years, you were the one bright light for me. Do not let that light go out. Which is so good. I love Nehemia. She's so good. Nehemia then disappears from the portal before Celaena can say anything else, and she is heartbroken, okay? But in that moment, she hears Archer behind her. Celaena then speaks with Archer, Damaris in hand. She's like, okay, how did you get in here? How did, you know, all this stuff. She's so confused why he's in the castle catacombs, you know, all that whole system. He tells her that Nehemia showed him the passages and that he had been tracking her for weeks. Yeah, for weeks. Celaena's a little suspicious, and she tries to wipe off the word marks, and Archer's like, why are you doing that? To her disappointment, the word marks do not come off, okay? This is magic that's a little bit more than what she can handle. Archer then tells her to stop and grabs her arm, but as she tries to apprehend him, his sleeve has fallen back, and she sees the tattoo on his wrist, and it is the exact same symbol that she could interpret in the book that Nehemia had written. Nehemia was trying to tell her to not trust Archer. And that's when Celaena goes into her, you know, resourceful mode, her assassin mode, and she is on her guard, trying to figure out why Nehemia said not to trust Archer. So she tries to play it off. She tries to play Archer. He reveals that he knows about the word marks, he knows about the word key, but he doesn't want to destroy the keys, and he doesn't want to stop the king. He wants the keys for himself, okay? He wants to serve his own purposes. Now, through Celaena's playing Archer, she figures out that he killed Nehemia, not directly, but he pretended to be Minister Mollison and went to Grave and had him kill her before she could ever think to, like, take this to the king or, you know, share what they were doing, whatever, basically sell them out. He kidnapped Chaol to get Celaena away from the palace so that Grave could kill Nehemia. And then that's when Archer starts to sweet talk Celaena and says, we'd be really good together. Like, let's do what Nehemia couldn't. Then that's when Celaena turns on him and tries to attack him, but he's really fast. Fleetfoot also joins in on the fight, so good dog. We love Fleetfoot, we love you. A noise is heard from the portal, a growl of some sorts, if you will. The portal changes, okay? It changes to a rocky and ashen terrain, which is important, and that's why I said it. We'll keep that in mind. It may not come back now, but let's put it off to the side. And then something comes out of the portal, and it's not Nehemia. So Dorian rushes to Chaol's room on the way to get, you know, to go to Celaena, and thankfully Chaol's already been up. So and he like immediately knows. He's like, okay, lead the way. And they go immediately to Celaena's room, and they find the hidden passageway to the catacombs, where they're both like, okay, how long has this been here? And they find the hidden passageway, and they see Celaena lying on the floor, passed out, and Archer is cowering in a corner, and Fleetfoot is protecting Celaena, barking at this weird monster that had come from the portal. So there's a whole slew of messes, almost looking like a Raphaelite painting, you know, of some sorts. It's absolutely madness. Then Chaol, Dorian, and Celaena fight the monster after she's, you know, woken up. They fight the monster, and Archer runs down the passageways with the book, The Walking Dead, in hand, so they can't search for word marks to figure out, you know, what's going on. But Chaol wants Dorian and Celaena to leave. He's like, get out of here. And so as Dorian and Celaena begin to leave, in front of Chaol, the creature took Fleetfoot and went into the portal. Bad news bears, okay? And so Chaol runs after Fleetfoot, and that's why I love him, and that's why he's so much better than Matt from Vampire Diaries, okay? Chaol cares about dogs, and he cares about Celaena, and that's that. Celaena then runs after them, and once she crosses the portal, she shifts into Fae. You heard me right, Celaena is actually Fae, okay? And she's not just Fae, okay? She has powers as well, and she has fire powers, okay? Chaol, he grabs Fleetfoot and runs for the portal as Celaena gives him time to make their escape. And with her fire power, she plunges the sword into the ground, and the ground collapses underneath the creature and falls into it. Before Celaena could do anything else, Chaol grabs her and pulls her back through the portal, and she turns back into human. She shifts back into her human form. Yeah, crazy, right? Before, you know, they do anything else, she's like, we need to make sure nothing's gonna come through this portal. So with Dorian's blood, because it's magical, she draws a word mark over the portal to seal it, so nothing can come through, nothing can go in, because after a while the portal will disappear. So basically she's putting a cap over it. Then Celaena tracks Archer down through the passageways and intends to kill him, but she has this moment where she's like, no, you're gonna leave immediately. if you want to live. And then he tells her, I knew you're good. And she's like, no, Nehemia was. I'm not. And then she immediately kills him. And good for her. Chaol ends up seeing everything that's happening, and she's like, I need to explain some things. After they get cleaned up and they get situated, get checked by a healer with discretion, Dorian leaves Chaol and Celaena alone, and that's when Celaena tells Chaol about her Fae heritage. Her great-grandmother was Fae. Her mother wasn't able to switch into an animal form, but Celaena was able to switch from human to Fae, but she lost her ability to switch when magic stopped, so she's stuck in her human form. She only gives like brief details of the word marks and everything, and she asks him not to say anything, and he swears he won't say anything. He wants to keep her safe because if her Fae stuff was to come out, the king would kill her, and he doesn't want that. Even though they can't go back to where they were, he still cares about her and still loves her. She tells Chaol that Archer was behind killing Nehemia and kidnapping him. She says it's hard for her to ever trust him again. He understands that, you know, she wants him, but she can't ever get back to that place again. Like, that's not gonna happen. You know, that is understandable because she did try to kill him, so just gonna throw that one out there. And at the same time, she apologizes for what she did, for how she, you know, tried to kill him. And she still has strong feelings for him, but it's so difficult for her. And he knows it's difficult, and he tries to make it better by saying they both made mistakes. And he almost says that he loves her, but she stops him because she knows it'll hurt more if she says it, you know, or if he says it to her. That entire scene of them being vulnerable is really good, and I hate it whenever like things don't end up being happy and everything. So, and honestly, that scene was really good, and it was a really good way of like bringing closure to what was going on between Chaol and Celaena. So it was really good to see that written out and to read it. After leaving Celaena, Chaol goes to see his father and makes a deal with him. Basically, he wants his father to support the notion to send Celaena, the king's champion, over to Wendlyn to basically learn about their plans and army and naval defenses so they can, you know, better take over, kind of thing. In return, Chaol will go back with his father to Niel, his home, and leave his position as captain of the guard and go back to his position as being heir to the lordship. Now, Chaol does all of this because he wants to protect Celaena and get her out of Adolan, which will basically, you know, if the king finds out that she's Fae, it won't be good. And so if she's in Wendlyn, it's like the last safe place for Fae. And so he's like, okay, she'll be safe there. You know, that's good thinking. Celaena then tells Dorian what she told Chaol, but like with a little less. And she does tell him about Mort, and someday she'll take him down there to like meet him and tell him all about what's, you know, the catacombs and everything like that. And Dorian then reiterates that he will always be grateful for her, and it's like so sweet. I honestly think this, like, their friendship is so good because they're so alike. They're a great balance. So it's really good for them to be able to come back to this friendship. Now, we learn in a chapter that is from the king's kind of third person perspective, we learn that he knew of a portal opening. He felt it, and then he felt it closing. We also found out that he invited Baba Yellowleg, so he invited a witch to Rifthold so he could purchase her mirrors in order to find the missing Iron Teeth Alliance. Now, the mirrors, we kind of get like a little bit of description of like they have a magical power to be able to see certain things, like just either see the heart's desire, see future, see past, whatever it is. Like they have a magical essence to them. And so with the Iron Teeth Alliance, we know that that is the 3 clans of witches that have come together against the Crocians. Now, we learn that Celaena presented the king with Archer's head, and she did her job. So now she summoned him to get her next task, which the king sends her off to leave for Wendlyn the following day. And in his head, he sees that this is a perfect time to test some of their weapons while his champion is slowly taking down the Wendlyn court. Now, what are some of his weapons? We don't know, but we will find out in the next, like, chronological book, because in the next one, spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking about the Assassin's Blade, which takes place in the past. So after leaving the king, Celaena goes down to the tomb and she speaks with Celaena, which she hasn't really spoken to her a lot in this book. Celaena's like, I can't go. Okay, there's stuff I need to do here. Why am I being sent to Wendlyn? She knows that if she were to go to Wendlyn, she wouldn't continue with Elena's plan. But Celaena assures her that Chaol was only protecting her the way that he knew how, and that she'll be near Dornell. She'll be near Dornell, which we'll get more information on that soon. Dorn is upset that Chaol even suggested that Celaena go to Wendlyn, and Chaol understands. He's like, I understand. I knew all the possibilities of what were going to happen, all that stuff. But he knows he needs to do what needs to be done. And Chaol kind of makes a snide remark to Dorian saying, one of us has to start leading. And that's kind of like a gut punch to Dorian, because Dorian's like, okay, why did you say that? Jeez, it's kind of a bitchy thing to say, Chaol. The morning before Celaena leaves for Wendelin, she visits Nehemia's grave and kind of says her goodbyes and all this stuff, and she promises at Nehemia's grave that she will stop the king. And with a blood oath that she makes with her palm, with the blood from her palm, she promises that on her name and on her life, she will see Elwë free. Celaena says her goodbyes to Dorian because he won't be able to say goodbye to her at the dock, so they're saying goodbye now, and she asks if he'll keep Fleetfoot safe while she's gone. He's like, yeah, of course I'll keep her safe, you know, it's gonna be okay. She promises that she'll come back to him, and even though he senses there's more in her words, he believes that she'll be back. Like there's a concrete promise in there. Chaol goes down to the docks to say goodbye to Celaena and to make sure that she knew what he was doing, like why he suggested she go to Wendelin. And she then takes his time, very short time by the way, like 5 minutes, to tell him everything. The word keys, the word gates, Baba Yellowlegs, the papers in the tomb she hid, the riddle, and she told him that the king has at least one word key, and she told him about the dead creature under the library to never open the door, and she told him about Roland and She told him about Roland and Caltaine, and she then gives him the Eye of Elena and tells him to never take it off, that it'll protect him. She just wants him to know that about like everything in case something were to happen, because if she were to be like taken captive in Wendelin and something were to happen in Adarlan, he could go down and he could take care of things, you know, whatever. He could at least like be a fixture of hope in Adarlan while she's gone. She then whispers something to him. We don't know what she says, and he doesn't know what it means either, but she says that when he figures it out, it wouldn't matter and that she would still choose him. So just as she goes up on the ship, he tells her he loves her, and all she says is, I'm sorry, and Chaol watches as she sails away. Now apparently, she told Chaol a date, just a month and a day, and it was the day that she left the city, and it was also the day that she snapped into Endovier, and the day her parents died. So he went back to her room and began to sort through her desk, and he went through her books, going through like a catalog of roll chronicles, and he came to a roll chronicle that was that date, but 10 years ago. And he sees the article announcing the death of the king of Terrazin. His nephew and his nephew's wife were all found assassinated, and there was no word about the fate of the nephews, the heir, about his daughter, Aelin. Now the king of Terrazin, Orlon, his nephew Ro, and Ro's wife, Evelyn came from Wendelin, okay? Her maiden name was Ashriver. Now, Chaol took out a genealogy book that traced the genealogies of the royal houses of Terrazin and Adarlan. He saw that Evelyn's grandmother was Mab, which is Aelin's great-grandmother. She was one of the Fae's sister queens, Maeve, Mab, and Mora. Now, Chaol remembered that during Yulmis, when Celaena was given the arrow of Mab, who is Deanna as the goddess, her goddess name, she looked uncomfortable, and then remembered that Celaena said her great-grandmother was Fae. He then looks back at the chronicle and he sees an article that says Aelin died. He then looks back at a chronicle and sees an article that says her body was nowhere to be found, but was probably dumped in the river by their home and that she's dead. And that's when he remembers that Celaena told him that Arabin, her former master of the Assassin's Guild, had found her half dead and frozen by a riverbank. Now, he wasn't sure to believe, and he was all like doubting this, until he saw a poem that was scribbled at the top of the Ashriver family tree, which I will read to you. And it says, Ashriver eyes, the fairest eyes from legends old, of brightest blue ringed with gold. And I'm going to continue on. Bright blue eyes ringed with gold. A strangled cry came out of him. How many times had he looked into those eyes? How many times had he seen her avert her gaze? That one bit of proof she couldn't hide from the king. Celaena Sardothian wasn't in league with Alan Ashriver Galanthinius. Celaena Sardothian was Aelin Ashriver Galanthinius, heir to the throne and rightful queen of Terrazin. Celaena was Aelin Galanthinius, the greatest living threat to Adarlan, the one person who could raise an army capable of standing against the king. Now, she was also the only person who knew the secret source of the king's power and who sought a way to destroy it, and he had just sent her in the arms of her strongest potential allies to the homeland of her mother, the kingdom of her cousin, and the domain of her aunt, Queen Maeve of the Fae. Celaena was the lost queen of Terrazin. Chaol sank to his knees. And that's where it's left at. Okay, now let's get into the character descriptions and lore that I didn't fit into the plot summary. So when Celaena is training at the beginning of the book with Chaol, she is described as nimble as a stag. And when you realize at the end of the novel, She is the lost princess and now queen of Terrazin. Like, she's the lost princess and she's the heir, so she is the rightful queen of Terrazin. Their sigil is also a stag. She also sees a stag in her dreams, so basically there's a lot of great symbolism with her being recounted as a stag, or being graceful as a stag. So moving on to Chaol, Celaena refers to him being too smart for his own good, which I also think has something to do about says something about Celaena, because she doesn't just hand out compliments left and right. So, which also goes into, like, you know, Celaena was also kind of in love with him. But Chaol is smart and he can figure out things, and he's just like, but he's also like incredibly stubborn. But Chaol is very smart. He's too smart for his own good sometimes. His loyalty can be a double-edged sword. That's what really gets him. Celaena also doubles down on her feelings for Chaol's goodness by saying, if we could find more men like him, because, like, he is loyal. He's loyal to a fault. He's loyal to the king and to Dorian, but Celaena is tempting him, definitely tempting him towards that way. We see that it does work. And now to Kaltain, okay? When Celaena visits her, she noticed that Lady Kaltain has night dark eyes. Now, I want to put a pin in that because there's a lot of descriptions with, like, black items such as eyes, rings, stones, stuff like that. But I do want to put a pin in that. Speaking of suspicious, Roland, Dorian's cousin, has a black ring around his finger, just like Cain did, just like Parrington, and just like the king. Something fishy. And lastly, with Grave, we learn that Arabin Hamel, who is the leader of the Assassin's Guild, rejected him from the guild for being too cruel with his prey. Okay, now let's get into themes. As far as themes go, the past is catching up with Celaena, with Archer, with thoughts of Sam, with Nehemia's sacrifice and the reason behind it, and talks of the lost princess of Terrazin. Celaena's gonna have to be something bigger than she intends to be. She is tied to the fate of this world, as Elena says. And then, of course, another theme that we get is colonialism. Point blank, I don't think I have to describe anything else from it other than Adeline is taking over different countries and kingdoms. So let's get into Mythos and Lore. I believe for the rest of the series we will keep getting into the semantics of word, because I think that's we've already gone into 2 different books of how word is approached and what is going on with that word, what is word, what is behind word, all this stuff. So like I said in my last video, word is what they believe that holds the universe together, sort of like a version of the Force from Star Wars. And word in our world is an old English derivative of weird, which is another term for fate. And in Norse mythology, we have the deity Ur, or in the Englishified language, like a now modern English language, Erd. Now, from all this word talk, I'm going to throw in a theory, okay? One that may not be answered by like the next book or anything, but hopefully will be answered soon. So I think that word is not only just a force, but I think word is a person, a god or a goddess perhaps. Now in Norse mythology, Ur is a goddess, so I think, you know, maybe it might be a goddess, but I think with all the gods and goddesses that we have already displayed in this series, I think that because there's this huge power that they keep talking about word as having this significant amount of power to be able to traverse different realms and different worlds, basically, I think that this may be a goddess that may be behind it. Anyway, that's my theory, so let's keep moving. When Celaena meets Mort, she can't understand why he's alive at all. He's like a doorknob that's being worked by magic, but magic hasn't worked in like 10 years, so it's like, how, you know, what gives? So Mort informs Celaena that new magic doesn't work, but that old magic and ancient magic, like word marks and such, still works. So the king can't ban word marks and ancient magic, and King Brannon made Mort. So I think we're talking about, that kind of feeds into the theory of word being so much more powerful than we think, and that it might be a person behind word, like it might be a goddess or something. So how does that tie in with King Brannon? Like, how does he have that much power? We do know that he was Fae, but like, what kind of power did he have? Because we know by this, Celaena has like a fire power. She has an elemental power. So like, what kind of power did Brannon have? Now we do learn that King Brannon carved the words "Ah" times Rift on his daughter's tomb, which first of all is really sad because that gives us the belief that Elena died before Brannon. But also, what does it mean? Which we will see. We also get information that there are legends when Gavin used a maris, his sword, he would only see truth, which is like a very beautiful poetic thing to do. But like, also, what does that mean? Like, does he because people are like, oh, swing true. Basically, like, if someone fights in a duel or fights in battle, hopefully your sword will swing true. So basically, hopefully your sword will kill the right people, but in very, very basic terms type thing. Have wisdom when using a sword type thing. When Celaena's in the library, there's a specific description of how the darkness becomes a living thing. Now, I think that because the magic has been snuffed out, or rather the new magic has been snuffed out, I think that darkness and light are sentient beings. And the magic of those two things are dormant. So they are lurking even when magic doesn't work. So I think there's something, I don't know, that was a theory I had where I was like, oh, that could be something, but also could be nothing. Like, it just depends. And we also get, whenever Celaena is going down into, like, underneath the library, she notices that a torch lay discarded, which means, like, no one has been there in a long time. So just want to add that. Like, when was the last time that someone was down in the library? Was it Gavin? So this one's really good. I really had a fun time with this. Why had Gavin picked this site to build a castle? So while Celaena is traversing the underneath the library, she wonders, why had Gavin picked this site to build his castle? Had there been something here before, or something beneath it worth hiding? Theory time. I think there's more to the name Rifthold. We know from this book that the word keys can open up portals to other worlds. I think that Rifthold was the site of one of those places. It might have been one of the original portals that opened up, and I think that Gavin wanted to bury that rift deep down below, so he created the tombs and the catacombs and all that stuff just to basically, like, make it a labyrinth, not make it so easily found. I really had fun with thinking of that. My mind is still reeling. I'm still gonna have to keep my eyes open, but I think there's something there with the name. Okay, so we also learned that iron is the one element that is immune to magic, which I find this interesting because it plays in a theory that crosses into other series, and I just want to put a pin in it for now, because with any, like, magic system, you need to figure out, like, what's immune to magic, but also, like, what fights against it. Like, the magic is something that has to ebb and flow kind of thing. I find it really interesting. I want to put a pin in it because in another series there may be something that coincides with that, or that may relate to that in some form or fashion, but I just think that's really interesting. So we learn that many people believe that magic users originated their powers from the gods, but that the king of Adarlan thinks it's an affront to the gods. And in that same, like, paragraph, we learn that the, like, magic had come in, like, different variations, especially among the Fae. And some of the variations include, like, healing, shape-shifting, summoning flame, summoning water, storms, encouraging growth of crops and plants, seeing the future, etc. But we also learn that the gifts have been watered down over the millennia, but there's some people who have, like, rare strong ones. Basically, over time, the powers have become, like, much more docile versions of the original, maybe powers that they got from the gods type thing. So when we're in the catacombs with Nemi and Celaena, we learn about the constellations, and we find out some of them. 9 of the stars made up a familiar pattern, the dragonfly. And then we go on to, a few feet away, another constellation lay on the floor, the wyvern. It sat at the head of Gavin's sarcophagus. It's a symbol of Adarlan's house, as well as the second constellation in the sky. And then it goes on to say, Celaena was staring at the last constellation, the stag, lord of the north, the symbol of Terrazin, Elena's home country. And also Celaena's? Aelin's? So with word marks, of course, we get more of it, but Celaena wants to learn more about word marks, and we get that it said, usefulness aside, it was a forgotten secret language, a system of accessing a strange power. Also feeds into my word maybe more than what we're thinking type thing. Okay, so we get some great history lesson now. When Dorian is in the library, he's learning more about his family history and, like, where his magic came from, all that stuff. We learn that Gavin went to war against Erewhon in the depths of the Rune Mountains. Only a third of Gavin's warband survived. Only a third of them. Brannon gave Adarlan to Gavin as a wedding present. And since Celaena, there are no other Fae relatives. Now, Rune is an interesting name. This isn't a spoiler or anything. We do know this from just, like, a quick description of the back of a book. One of the other series, one of the Sarah J. Maas series, Crescent City, we learned that there is a character named Rune. I wanted to put a pin in that because I'm like, okay, there's a reason why the name is so similar. It's, like, literally the same name, just with an extra N. And I just wanted to, we're gonna keep an eye on that. And second, Celaena is the only Fae relative that Dorian has, or so we think, because someone could have scrubbed the genealogies, because Dorian's quickly, he got those genealogies from the library. So someone could have tampered with them. So maybe there's more that we know. We don't, who knows? From Baba Yellowlegs, we learn that the witches come from Fae and Valg breeding. Crocian witches took after Fae, their Fae likeness, and the 3 clans of the Iron Teeth took after the Valg. Now we learn in this whole description, Jordan basically thinks Valg, he knew that name. And then he says, the demons who stole Fae to breed with them, which made them witches, right? And that's when he recalls the beautiful Croatian witches had taken after their Fae ancestors, while the 3 clans of the Iron Teeth took after the race of demons that had invaded Erelia at the dawn of time. So we learn about the poem in the catacomb from what we know about, we've already learned, by the Valg 3 were made. The Valg were the race of demons. The Valg must have made the word keys of the gate stone of word. Obsidian the gods forbade, and the stone they greatly feared. So how does obsidian fit all this? Is that what the Valg brought? Is that what the Valg made the word keys out of? We get, of course, in grief he hid one in the crown, which is in Celaena's crown, that one of the word keys was found. So we found that the king has that one. The poem is a huge thing of lore because that will keep us going. That will figure out where the other word keys are. We learn from one of the librarians that only the nobles of Terrazin spoke the language of the Fae, which is what Celaena spoke. Then I also jotted down that a seer or an oracle will give instant answers. Not only will this give us light to what witches can do, but I think the sentiment could also be used for future characters in other books. And I want to also put a pin in that. There's a lot of things I'm like, oh, that could come up later, and that could also come up later. But I firmly believe that will come up later. So when Celaena goes to visit Baba Yellowlegs, she wants to learn more about what's going on, like what the riddle means. And so she tells her about the word keys. Baba talks about the word keys, the 3 word keys to open the word gate. She then says something really interesting that I marked, and I want to save it for later, but it says, nameless is my price. We then learn from her that word governs and forms the foundations of this world and other worlds. Worlds that exist beyond your knowledge on top of each other. The word keeps these realms apart. That's why I firmly believe that I think behind word or word is someone. Now we also learn that from Baba, she says, there are gates, black areas in the word that allow for life to pass between the worlds. There are word gates that lead to Erelia. All sorts of beings have come through them over the eons, benign things, but also the dead and foul things that creep in when the gods are looking elsewhere. Then she also goes on to say, but long ago, before humans overran this miserable world, a different sort of evil broke through the gates, the Valg, demons from another realm, bent on the conquest of Erelia, with the force of an endless army behind them. In Wendland, they fought against the Fae. Try as the immortal children might, they could not defeat them. Then the Fae learned that the Valg had done something unforgivable. They had taken a piece of a word gate with their dark magic and split it into 3 slivers. 3 keys, 1 key for each of their kings. Each of their kings, using all 3 at once, the Valg kings were able to open that word gate at will, to manipulate its power to strengthen their forces, to allow an endless line of soldiers to pour into the world. The Fae knew that they must stop it. So we also learned that a small band of Fae set out to steal them from the Valg kings, and it was an impossible task, and most of those fools didn't return. That's what Baba says. But the word keys were indeed retrieved, and the Fae Queen Maeve banished the Valg to their realm. Yet for all of her wisdom, Maeve couldn't discover how to put the keys back in the gate, and no force, no steel, no weight could destroy them. So Maeve, believing that no one should have their powers, sent them across the sea with Brandon Galanthinius, the first king of Terrazin, to hide on this continent. And thus the word gate remained protected, its power unused. Okay, so we get a lot of lore of the word gates and of how the Valgs came about, and basically the Valgs made them and all this stuff. And we also get that the keys could give someone immense power. And so then we learn from Celaena, which she learns from someone else, that the way to kill a witch was to cut off her head. And I also want to put down, Baba scuttles around like a spider. Celaena, she knows how to kill a witch because she remembered someone telling her that from the past. I also wanted to add that bubbles, but I also want to put down that Baba scuttles around like a spider because I think it'll be relevant in a future book. So we also learned that Baba was the leader of the Yellowlegs clan. After destroying the Croatians, she joined an alliance with the Beaks and the Blue Bloods. So a lot of colors going around. We learned a little bit of the Walking Dead in the book, and that's why I kind of made a comment earlier where I was like, I wish we knew a lot more what was in the book. But we do learn that in the Walking Dead, you can summon demons, you can raise the dead, and you can torture, and so on. So we then learn, while Celaena is going up the clock tower, we learn that she raised her torch. Shimmering obsidian walls surrounded her, reaching high, high, high. So high that she couldn't see the ceiling. And that's when she realizes she's in the clock tower. She makes the connection. The king's ring, the ring on Parrington's finger, and Cain's, the same stone. So that stone, obsidian which the gods forbade. So I think that that is a connection to the Valg, that is a connection to the word keys, that is a connection to some kind of construct with, maybe that's from the Valg's homeworld, whatever it is. So in the tomb, Celaena learns that the phrase "awe times rift" actually is an anagram for "I am the first." And apparently that was the only confirmation she needed, because that's where she found one of the word keys, or that's where one of the word keys was to be found, but the king found it when he was 20. So good for him, but also not, because he ruined the world and enslaved a lot of people, and also tampered with magic, so not good. And then we get an interesting conversation with Mort. He goes, "Word?" Mort laughed. "You're pleading with the wrong force." Thank you for that, but what the hell does that mean? What's the right force? Okay, and is it a force? Is it someone that we don't know? Is another being at work? And that's when we learned that the king used the word keys to stifle magic. All magic, she added, but his own. So next I wanted to point out that the world through the portal after Nehemi left is a land of mist and rock. Now, this can mean a lot of things, but I just want to note it because I think this is a place that's going to be reoccurring. Just by the description, we learn that it's not a flourishing place. It's very much a barren, cut off from anything giving life kind of place. Almost like a desert. Celaena basically, after she gets knocked out and everything, she wonders if she died and woken in hell. I made a mark on this because I'm like, okay, I have a feeling this is going to come up later. Okay, so we do get confirmation of the king saying that he was the one who brought Baba Yellowlegs to Rifthold, and it was to purchase a few of her mirrors and learn what remained of the Iron Teeth alliance that had once been strong enough to rip apart the witch kingdom. Absolutely insane. So we do know the witch's mirrors. They are super powerful. They have a lot of like magic that flows through them. And then we get an interesting thing. So remember how I said that there was a word mark above Celaena's brow after she had fought Cain? Well, the king looked into it and he was like, okay, what does it mean? It said that the word mark was impossible to decipher. The king couldn't figure it out. And so he realized it either meant nameless or unnamed, something akin to anonymous, which is interesting because we already get the witch Baba Yellowlegs saying, "Nameless is my price." So what does that mean? Is Celaena or Aelin, is she nameless? Is she going to be the price? Who knows? And then of course we get a bit of history towards the end that Aelin's mother's name was Evelyn, and Evelyn's grandmother was Mab, who was the youngest of the three Fae sister queens, Maeve, Mora, and Mab. Mab was the youngest, and when she died, she became a goddess, and to be more specific, she became Diana, Lady of the Hunt. It's close to Roman mythology of Diana, who's the Lady of the Hunt. There's some similarities with different mythologies in this book series. I find it very interesting, which I go crazy for. And then of course we learn that the Ash River eyes, the fairest eyes from legends old, of brightest blue ringed with gold. And that's the last of the lore that I found in this book, and that is the end of this video. There was a lot that I went through. I know I probably missed some, but I have everything cataloged because I realized I should probably do a roundup of a video wrapping up the series, like kind of like things that probably were mentioned in the first book that have been confirmed maybe in the last book, whatever it may be. So I'm gonna keep a document of that, and so obviously I'm just gonna keep that going off to the side. But if there's anything that I missed that you're like, hey, I remember this, you didn't mention this, let me know down in the comments. I would love to figure out, I'd love to be reminded, because I'm only human. But yeah, that's the end of this video. Next, I'll be going through Assassin's Blade. I was gonna go Heir of Fire next because that's how I read it, but then Sarah J. Maas updated her website back in January with like right before House of Flame and Shadow came out, saying like, hey, this is the actual order you should read the Throne of Glass books in. So I'll go with her. She's the author. I am very excited for this. I already started playing this, so have no fear. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, comment. Comment whether you like this book or Throne of Glass. Did you like this book? Did you not like this book? If you haven't already, please go check me out on Instagram. I have an Instagram that you should totally check out. I post a lot of fun stuff on there. Yeah, all my links to my socials, I'll be all linked down below. I will see you guys for the next video. All right, bye!